too little, too late, slap on the wrist, a staff and an athletic department that simply doesn't do their job. Sexual assault and rape on college football programs is endemic across the country and has been for a tremendously long time. As a matter of fact, just to set things up again, the numbers bear it out with regard to hazing. This from the University of Maryland. More than half of college students are involved in some form of hazing, at least one hazing related death on a college campus each year. And this doesn't even just touch on what's going on with regard to college football programs, where it seems every one of these knuckleheads puts it in their craw, if you will, that I have a fiefdom here, the college football coaches, and they get away with it. Then again, the athletic department lets them get away with it. What the fuck? I mean, it's the only thing I can say out loud here with regard to sexual assault and the rape of human beings for college athletics. John, this is nothing new, and yet we continue to see this over and over again. Why?
You're right. It is nothing new, Ed. I can tell you this, and for the very first time, I will reveal that I was hazed in college, and I've never mentioned this to anybody. All right. Now, I didn't undergo some of the things that are alleged to have undergone here. I can tell you where, when it went off the hook, or at least I thought it was getting ready to go off the hook, I turned around and told the guy who was getting ready to, hammer me with a cattle prod. I said, if you touch me with that thing, I will beat you until you're within an inch of your life. And he backed off. So it took something like that for me to get him to calm down. I was willing to go along with it. I went along with it. I understand hazing is such a horrible term for it anyway, but that's what it turns out to be. What hazing does is it brings out the sadists in people. It brings out the power trip in people. What it's intended to do is it's intended to bring
hazing. Let's stop using the word hazing. Let's call it.
Well, I would agree with that.
Rape.
I would agree with that. Okay, that's exactly that's the problem. It's gone too far. I would tell you that my initial inclination, whenever I hear stories like this, Ed and Pete, whenever I hear stories like this, I'm like, oh man, I went through this when I was in school. There's nothing to it. Who let it get out of control? And usually it's the leadership that lets it get out of control. This may be where Pat Fitzgerald in this instance is held culpable. He should have known, but I would tell you, as someone who's worked for and worked within sports teams for all of my professional life, it's damn near impossible to keep track of everything that your kids do. And I would also tell you that, well, that's your job. No, it's not. It's not their job. Your job is to coach them and to win games. That's your job today. Your job is not to play nursemaid. Your job is not to bring them up, however you feel they should have been brought up. That should have been done at home. And so this to me speaks to a larger issue societal wise, as these kids don't know the difference between right and wrong. And so when they get unloosed and unhinged like this, it simply gets out of control. The coaches aren't there to rein them in, or they just don't want to know about it. And that's where they should be held culpable.
Pete, I think John makes a good point here, because by the time it gets to college, if you're a 17, 18, 19-year-old student, college athlete of any sort, and if you don't know that sticking a broom handle up somebody's ass is bad, and you do it anyway, something's wrong there from the beginning. But not only that, you then have the administrations and the coaches who turn a blind eye to it. They know about this. Fitzgerald knew about it. The university knew about it. They've all known about it. High schools know about it. So where do we draw the line then? Or, my God, do we draw the line back at 12 years of age and say that we have to start with the parents, but we still have to include the administrators and the coaches, yes?
Look, I think hazing used to be either a freshman or an NFL rookie and carry pads. That used to be hazing, right? That used to be hazing. Maybe they tape you to the goalpost and leave you there for an hour. I think as soon as you touch somebody, all bets, now it's assault, whether it's sexual or whatever. Now it is assault. It is absolutely ridiculous. And absolutely, Pat Fitzgerald knew about it. I read a report today that he would do special claps and rhythm in practice to make sure that they went through the Shrek method, whatever they called it. Camp Kenosha was another word they were using. Runnings, whatever it was. Pat Fitzgerald would signal in practice which guys were to be dealt with, code red, if you will, just like in Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
Same type of thing. It's ridiculous to say. Same thing happened in Baylor. Same thing that happened with Penn State. Now this isn't maybe there yet, but all these coaches knew. Rick Pitino knew what was going on in Louisville with all that nonsense, with the building dedicated to his brother-in-law who tragically died in 9/11. He knew they all know this stuff. Joe Paterno knew. Joe Paterno may not have seen it with his own eyes, but he there's no way he could not have known, some of the stuff that was going on, and he turned the other way. Same thing with Baylor. Same thing with Pitino. Same thing with this Pat Fitzgerald and the Ivy League institution of the Midwest. So it's really disgusting, and I don't know how it makes you a better man to try to go dry hump somebody near a locker. And what is that? What is that? What does that do? What does that prove? I mean, and then you throw
power,
in. Now, then you throw. Hang on. Let me just finish.
Bingo.
Then you throw in. Then you throw in. I saw another report. Pounding like 10 bottles of Gatorade, which is that can kill you. I saw a radio stunt about 10 years ago, John. Right? You guys might remember in San Francisco, woman drank a whole gallon of water or whatever it was. 2 guys who dropped dead right on the show. So that's the Gatorade stuff is minor, but that stuff is bad enough. Forcing kids to do that. Then you factor in all the sexual assault stuff, which is exactly what this is. It's sexual assault, if not rape, whatever it is, dry humping, whatever you want to call it. It's disgusting, and it's absolutely got to stop.
But then, John, why are we still talking about this in indignant terms? Because the three of us sitting here know right from wrong. We can talk about rape, sexual assault. We can talk about Pat Fitzgerald. We can talk about Northwestern and the administration basically doing this, which they all do.
Because
why? It's 2023 for Christ's sake, and we're still talking about young men raping, that's what it is, and sexual assault, other young men, and it happens to women too. Let's not leave the women out of the program here.
Oh, no, it does.
Because
it does.
It's rife at college football programs, this on both sides. Why are we still here so angry when nothing gets done and we're here again?
Because you touched on it, Ed. It's an issue of power, and it's an issue of control. And we have a viewer who just wrote actually a great question. What about the quality and control staff? There are plenty of individuals that are hired to assist with these college teams, yet it isn't easy to monitor. That's it 100%. The problem is that the assistant coaches do the monitoring. The head coach largely, and this is, I think, what happened in Rick Pitino's case and probably happened in everybody else's case, probably at Northwestern's as well. He said, look, you got to make sure you rein this in. You got to keep this under control. Don't let it get out of hand. But the problem is when these guys are taking care of this stuff, they lose sight of it because they're like, this is not my job. I'm not a nursemaid to a bunch of, yahoos. And they also do it because they want the team to set up its own sort of fiefdom, if you will. Only, you have leaders, you have power brokers, you have followers. And so it feeds on itself to the point where one guy gets a little taste of this, then it just continually goes. The coaches don't rein it in because the coaches don't want to let down the head coach. I told you to take care of that. You didn't take care of that. Guess what happens the next time your contract is up? You're out. I'm going to make a change. The assistant coaches are all walking on eggshells because of that. The head coach doesn't want to know about anything, and the players are trying to elbow their way into the top of the echelon, the power structure, because they went through it when they were younger, and it's their turn now to dish it out to somebody else. It is a perpetual cycle. And I know this from my own time, as I explained my own experience over 40 years ago in college. It was all in good fun. We all laughed about it. We all had, we all drank about it. We all, a couple of fist fights broke out. But you know what? Hey, it was fine. We were all good with it. Nobody got hosed with a broom handle. I can tell you that.
John,
but I can tell you that
what you just said. But let me just clarify.
Sure.
But with what you experienced years ago, did it reach the level at that time of sexual assault?
No. We stripped naked.
Mm-hmm.
Sure did. Stripped naked, calisthenics.
Ways can be considered assault.
We had we had human feces slung at us. It was in this big pot of stew, they called it.
Oh.
And so they would slop it out in front of us, and we'd have to do naked calisthenics in front of this pot of stew with a guy standing over on the side that if we didn't do what they said they'd do, he would fire off the cattle prod.
Then let's move forward here and try to get some kind of resolution, I guess, as we move on and everything we have to talk about.
I don't know how we're going to resolve that.
But we're certainly not going
I
to
can laugh about it now.
I guess the opinionation from what we're talking about here is, what is the next step then that would be the smart step? Because to me, it has to be, you don't just fire the head coach. You have to then fire the assistants. You have to then go to the athletic department. You have to go. To me, this always goes straight up to the athletic director, because I've been around college sports and covered it for well over 4 decades now. And I can tell you that at the time that I was at the University of Miami and the shit was going on there, where people were going, does that really happen? Yes, it does. The AD knew about it. The associate ADs knew about it. The coaches, the trainers, everybody knew what was happening when it came down to the money that was going through the department, through the athletic department, through the players, the drugs that were being handed out. Everybody knew, but everybody just said, it's all part of competition. How do we stop? What is that? We've got to draw a line here somewhere, gentlemen.
Oh, you can't, but John,
what do we do?
I mean, Ed, you keep thinking people have common sense, and no matter what happens in society, you're going to get idiots. Right. Now, I think you also got to include President Michael Schill. Their response that he made, that he's going back and forth through as more reports come out. I mean, they got to look at him. The Board of Trustees or Regents, whatever the fuck it's called, they got to look at him, because the AD is usually responsible. In this case, you got to look at the president of this institution right now and why or why not he was going to deal out more punishment. That explanation's a joke, what he just said today. He's going to get this ripped out of him.
This tweeting from John Jensen. The coaches, and for those who are just listening, the coaches are responsible for establishing and maintaining the culture of a program. The quality of a program is indicative of the embodiment of standards and ethics of its core. That absolutely says everything there, because it still has to go back to the coaches one way or the other.
But it goes back to all of them.
Held responsible. They have to be ultimately held responsible here, which is why Pat Fitzgerald is out of a job.
And he doesn't need to be the only one fired. That's my point, John. You need to fire.
I agree.
The problem with it is when you get to this point where it is so rife within any sort of a program, and this the college football program, we all know it's not just Fitzgerald. We all know it's not just the university president or the athletic director. This is a culture that is now permeated down through the assistant coaches. So every single one of those assistant coaches knew one way or another that somebody was getting sexually assaulted and raped. They let it go. The trainers knew. They let it go. The ball boys and the ball girls, everybody knows it goes on because everybody talks, and all the players know. Every fucking one of them knew that somebody was being assaulted, and nobody stood up. Fucking cowards. That's where it goes, and that's my anger, God damn it. Get rid of this. If you think you're going to be so great about it, and I'm going to go to Pete's common sense, he's right, have some balls, for Christ's sake. Stand up. Help somebody. Don't let somebody else get a broomstick shoved up their ass because you want to play football.
Well, you mentioned the ball boys and the ball girl. They probably have more information than anybody. They probably could, but they're probably, like you said, they're probably being threatened. I mean, there's so many people with so much information, from the president all the way down. There's no question. It's the culture. You hope that it's got to change. I'm sure the president's going to issue some bullshit statement about how they're going to teach this and going to teach that. You can't teach common sense, like you said. How do you tell somebody? Do I really have to have a seminar about not shoving a broomstick up somebody's tuchus? I mean, seriously.
The president of the college teaches at the renowned law school at Northwestern. He should know. He should know. That's why when he came out and said, I may have erred, in my initial, response here, what?
But
what?
But I want to just take it one step further, too, because let's go past the coaches. Let's go past the president, the AD, and the coaches and the players. I want to go to the fans and the boosters. I want to go to those who shovel millions of dollars at a program every single year, not just Northwestern, but a lot of them, who say it's all about winning those football games, winning those basketball games, got to keep everybody happy. They're the ones who continue to, and gentlemen, I'll bet you right now, whatever I had in my pockets, run the credit card, that every single one of them right now will say, boy, that's terrible. We got to do something about it. Here's another $50,000 to make sure that we win. Let's keep it going. Let's
Well,
The
hang on a
boosters
second.
and the fans don't give a shit.
Hang on a second. This team has won the 4 games in 2 years. They're coming off a 1-11 season, so I think he was close to being canned anyway. They can talk all they want. And I look, as a coach, to win 10 games in that program 3 different times, that's a miracle in itself. But that doesn't excuse
Which is why he still had a
anything.
job. That's why he still had a job, because of what he was able to do. But the last couple of years, that program has been awful. So if you're going to be a big boy, then you need to act like it. And if you have won 4 games in 2 years, the coach clearly is on the hot seat. And this just pushed it over the edge. He was on his way out anyway. He had to be if you're going to be a quote-unquote Big Ten school.
Yep.
But let's take it one step further here, John, because if he's on his way out the door, and you're right, Pete's right as well in this, it's not like all of a sudden this season, in order to try to win games, they decided to sexually assault their fellow players. This is a culture that's been going on for years there.
And there's more to it. There's more to it, too, because there was another report, I believe, in it might have been in the Northwestern paper, about a lot of Latino and African Americans and the racial overtones and what they were made fun of. And there's a lot more. There's some more racial stuff that 4 people came out and said too, that we were made fun of as a Latino player or an African American player. This, that, and the other thing. I mean, not as egregious as what we're talking about sexual assault and everything else, but nevertheless, allegations of racism on that football team, are also there. I think there's a lot more that's going to come out here, and I think that President Michael Schill is going to be in some serious trouble here, as was at Penn State back in the day.
Well, wait for the lawsuits, too, because now if, let's say, Fitzgerald files a lawsuit, then you're going to have discovery that's going to have to come out, which means both sides are going to have to appear in a court, and they're going to have to tell some really sordid stories here on both sides. And what happens the first time a player or a parent of a player decides, you know something, my kid didn't quite like being sexually assaulted. I'm going to sue this university for about $50 million. Again, discovery, lawsuits. Pete, I agree with you. The president needs to be fired, but you watch as the lawyers right now, as we're talking, are lining up, telling them, we got to settle these cases right now. Let's get out in front of it. We got to give them $10 million. Get the endowment fund out. Let's go ahead and pay them off so this disappears, because that's the real story to what's going to happen.
Look at what went on at Michigan State for all those years. Larry Nassar. The only thing bad that happened 2 days ago is that they didn't kill him. He got stabbed to death. But look at how long that went on.
I can't think of anybody who deserves to get shivved more than Larry Nassar. Thank you very much.
I just hope he's suffering like he should. But I mean, look how long that must have gone on at Michigan State before anything came of it. That wasn't something that happened overnight or over a year. That was something that was going on for years.
But
the sexual assault.
Can we not also say that in the years, and then we can move on here, that, and this is something we could do a 3-hour show on, the fact that this is happening at the college level details that it's happening at the high school level. And probably, I don't have the number sitting in front of me right now, but I know that hazing and these sorts of assaults happen at high schools all the time. My God, I did it this morning. I started to look it up, and there's 1, 2, 10, 15, 20, 40 different high schools that are sitting there where this hazing just goes by like it's no big deal. And there's racism in it, there's sexism in it, there's assault in it, there's rape in it. I mean, I'm going to go back to John's point. Look, it didn't just start at college automatically. It's not like you got to college and somebody said, hey, let's dry hump somebody right now for the fun of it. This has been going on in high school, and it's happening while we're talking about it right now.
Well, John, I think back in the day when Friday Night Lights first came out and H.G. Bissinger first came out with that book, I was one of the first people to interview him in 1990 at some dinky station out in Central Mass. And it was absolutely amazing to me. And then the series, I mean, the book is phenomenal. The television series is phenomenal. The movie, I mean, it's not quite as prominent as what you're seeing at Northwestern or anything else. But John, you've probably seen Friday. You guys have probably seen Friday Night Lights. Maybe you haven't, but it's an excellent series, and a lot of this is in that series. Not sexual assault, but there's a little bit of racist stuff. There's money. There's boosters. All that stuff at top-notch programs in high school in this country.
Pete, the reason that I love that series is because it was true.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was true. Everything that you saw happens in that culture. And that's part of the problem. the bigger picture here that I think we're trying to tackle, and forgive me if I'm being a little bit forward here, but the bigger picture we're trying to tackle, we can't tackle, Ed. We can't tackle, Pete.
Yeah.
It's not going to. This is all ingrained
Agreed.
into society. This is
Yep.
It starts at the home level. Like I said, this is not excusable. The win at all cost mentality is what has driven everything to the point where we are now, where we're having conversations over, well, this is right, this is wrong. This should be right, this should be wrong. You shouldn't assault somebody like that. That's wrong. Okay, it's well beyond that point. And the coaches can't possibly monitor all of it. So how do we fix the problem in the short term? And the idea that Pete had, I think, is the only way to do this, is that the people who see these things happen have to have some balls and stand up and say, nope, not taking it. And I will say this, I have never regretted once in the middle of my hazing, I've never regretted once telling that guy I was going to beat the ever-loving crap out of him if he got close to me with that cattle prod.
Yep. Okay? And the other thing I will, and you're right.
That was it. It ended it. That took care of it right there.
Yeah, and the last thing too, I want, because somebody brought up, one of the listeners, to thank you about girls maturing faster than boys. I'm telling you right now, having dated recently, way back in the day, and I'm talking like the mid '80s to early '90s. Two girlfriends of mine who played in college on women's volleyball, basketball, and softball teams. And I'm telling you, in two separate instances, they had to quit. I'm not going to say which sport and what school, because they would not conform to becoming a lesbian. Plain and simple, the hazing that was going on. And I'm telling you, if Netflix ever did, or ESPN, or anybody did a 30 for 30 on how some women are treated, heterosexual women are treated in the big time world of athletics, it would blow the fucking doors off everything. It gets so swept under the rug. It's not quite as prominent maybe as what's going on here, but it happens. And I'm telling you, there are women out there, young women off the record, that their lives got somewhat destroyed because they were harassed about not conforming to a certain culture on their university. And it's almost just as bad as the men. It just doesn't get talked about.